Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Alla Renée Bozarth. We're going to be discussing her amazing poetry book, Diamonds in a Stony Field. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, pretty much wherever books are sold. But if you want to gather everything that Alla has in store, well, head on over to her personal site, and that's allareneebozarth.com. You'll find more information about her, more information on this fantastic book, Diamonds in a Stony Field, as well as find the hyperlink set up to take you to the purchasing pages. So one more time, that's allareneebozarth.com. And I do want to take this opportunity and quickly point out that Alla was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best publishing companies in the business. And of course, I'm talking about Exclusive Books. So listen to me. If you're a writer out there and you have a creation you need help moving, I'm going to give you some fantastic advice. You can do no better than Exclusive Books, okay? They're one of the best in the business to do it, and they specialize in taking your literary creation to the next level. So look into what Exclusive Books and their fantastic team can do for you today. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Alla here on the line. Now, as I mentioned, it's a poetry book, okay? So first and foremost, I'm just going to take a quick time out and point out I've always been so envious of poets, okay? I'm an artist myself. I'm a filmmaker. I'm an actor, and now a voice artist, but I've never been gifted with poetry, right? With the skill of poetry. And I've always been envious of how they can string words together because there is such a melodic and beautiful tone to the way they view the world and the way that they can capture certain moments. So I'm just going to start off by putting that out there. But this book is one that needs to be on your shelf. And people also, we're going to get into it a little later on, but she has a canon. I mean, she has a plethora of books that she has written. This is not the only one, but of course, it is the anchor for today's interview, so it's going to be the one that we're spending the most time talking about. But this poetry book is just filled with things that have inspired her and influenced her throughout her life. So it's going to be a wide range of topics that are discussed, but I promise you, regardless of where you are in your life right now, regardless of your age, your background, your standing economically, whatever, you can find a poem or multiple poems, I'm sure, and be able to reflect on it, be able to find the words of wisdom and the beauty in it, because her poetry is that accessible. It's that universal, and this is why it was a no-brainer to have her here on our network. It truly is a gift that we're able to be presented with. So this is what I want you all to do. Okay, first and foremost, don't take my word for it. Take Alla's. She's gonna articulate it much better than I ever could. You just sit back, strap in, and get ready for a wonderful ride, because that's exactly what you're going to receive here today. And by the time we finish, you're going to run to her Amazon, Barnes & Noble pages, and all of her pages to purchase her copies, because this book, as well as the other ones that she has in her canon, are going to be books you want to add to your shelf. I promise you that. Alla, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest with us today. How are you doing?
Oh, just great, Benji. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And I was thrilled to hear you talk about your own view of poetry. You don't have to be envious, because guess what? Everybody has poetry inside them. They don't recognize it because they think it's something extraordinary and special and maybe, as you suggested, inaccessible. But this isn't inaccessible poetry. I mean, it's not the kind that you have to understand, arcane subjects and references and metaphors. It's immediate. And the best poetry reads like excellent prose, and vice versa. And I want to quote May Sarton, who is a beloved poet. She wrote for all of her life, and she had a stroke when she was 70 years old. But it didn't stop her, slowed her down, but just a little bit. And that book of hers is called At 70. I want to refer to it because I'm over 70 myself. And the extraordinary thing about this particular book of mine is it is a reflection on the last 40 years of my experiences and my observations and my emotional and spiritual and sensual responses to all of that. So May Sarton, in her 70s, and I agree with every word, and it speaks to you, Benji, as an artist yourself. She says, you choose to be a novelist, but you're chosen to be a poet. This is a gift, and it's a tremendous responsibility. You have to be willing to give something terribly intimate and secret of yourself to the world and not care, because you have to believe that what you have to say is important enough. And then Martha Graham, the famous dancer of the first half of the 20th century, said, art is memory. It is the excavation of so many memories we have had of our mothers, our best and worst moments, of glorious experiences we have had with friends or film or music or dance or a lovely afternoon on a sloping green hill. All of this enters us if we are artists, but must be shared, handed over to others. We have to work with what life presents to us, and we have to work as well as we can while we can. So, in response to that, I want to give a poem dedicated to your whole listening audience and to you, Benji. It's called, and to myself, it's called Being Brave. Not a trespasser in your own life. Let yourself inhabit it, for you are the bravest of the brave, a mere creature consenting for one more day to being here. Despite the occasional horizonless night that is our human condition, despite the vicious tendencies of this passionate animal we are to devour itself and each other, despite all, you are here in this sorrowful mystery of being, sweetened only by the daily spiritual tea of our shared love for it all. Reassured in the undenying gifts of nature, as in the sheltering smiles of stranger and friend. Do not forget, then, how essential you yourself are to the courage of others. Thank those who smile from the heart for doing so, and smile toward those who may lack heart, which means everyone. For this courage to be lasts only a few seconds and must find fuel for more in the faithful surround of blessed spirits and buoyant companions. Every day you are here, agree to be one of them.
Wow. Listen, I love it, and I appreciate your kind words. I will say, just throwing myself under the bus here, I never quite got past the roses are red, violets are blue stage of poetry. I've written a lot of those, but my expertise never ranged further than that. But that was a beautiful poem, and thank you so much for sharing. And what a wonderful way to begin this interview. People, I'm telling you, we could not have selected the more perfect embodiment of a person of distinction to be with us here today. And that opening shows you why. I mean, it's just beautiful. There's so much here to be gained, and we just started. Without further ado, Alla, let's talk about your book, the anchor for today's interview, Diamonds in a Stony Field. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, I heard that expression. I can't take credit for putting those words together originally, but I don't remember where I heard it. But I loved it, and I knew I wanted it to be the title of a poetry collection that was an anthology that covered a long period of time, 1982 to 2022, 40 years. I wrote before. I've been writing books since 1978. I mean, I've been writing longer, but I've published since 1978.
Yeah.
And I have another 14 books in me yet to be published. And I think that Diamonds in a Stony Field is my 20th published book. It's about half of them prose, half of them poetry, some of them both. But so many things, I think everything that I write has to do with transformation and redemption. In other words, when we're going through really bad times and getting hurt, every step we take seems more pain. There is something to be learned from that, something to be transformative about that, and something of great value in all of our experiences. And I think of diamonds when they are still in their raw material. They just look like ordinary gray rocks. They have sharp edges. We can hurt ourselves walking through a field that's got a lot of diamond stones in it without having a clue that if we broke open just one of those stones, there would be something inside that reflects the sun. And that sunlight is so startling and luminous that it changes how we feel about having to go through this process, which is often painful. In other words, life itself. So I wanted to have a single image that expressed that, the pain of it, the light and glory and beauty of it. But you have to open it up in order to get that part. So the cover of the book has a photograph of a bunch of diamonds that look like ordinary gray rocks. They're rough, they're sharp, they're irregular, and then tucked in the middle of them, there is a polished diamond that's been broken open and discovered inside a rock, just like the other ones, the field full of gray rocks. And that's to say that even if we have low self-esteem, inside every living creature there is a diamond. And if we're blessed, our lives may allow us to discover that. And once we discover it, we have to keep going with it because it's an amazing process, the discovery of the light within ourselves and within each other.
That is fantastic. People, again, we're here on the line with Alla Renée Bozarth. We're discussing her book, Diamonds in a Stony Field, available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, pretty much wherever books are sold. But head on over to allareneebozarth.com today and gather everything that she has in store. Now, Alla, listen, I think we've waited long enough, and my listening audience is going to get upset with me if I don't hurry up and ask. We heard a poem that you started off with from someone else, but now we are very much interested in hearing a poem that you can share for us from your own background, from your own canon. So please, if you have one readily available, we would love to hear it.
Well, being brave about not being a trespasser in your own life, that's a poem that I wrote basically to myself, to give myself the courage to keep going and not to hold back because I feel unworthy or incapable, because usually once you get started, it takes care of itself. And to write poetry and to read poetry, best way to do it is not to worry about the traditional rhyme and rhythm and poetic scheme of the piece, but just to start writing from your heart. Mm-hmm. It's heart language. So another thing I wanted to talk about was the source of inspiration. I think I suggested earlier that a lot of inspiration comes from eavesdropping on the world. This has to do with my being outside in my backyard in the summertime and overhearing a conversation between my next-door neighbors. The father was in his 40s and the daughter was about 7. Yes, the poem says she's 7. It starts out that way. This is called starfishing. She is 7. Her name is Alex. She is watching for the whale. Her father's eagle eyes see him. She is perched on his shoulder, looking along the line of his vision, an eaglet on his wings. Call to him, says the father. Silently she does, and the whale hears her thoughts. Zoom, he's there, nose to nose with daughter and dad. Did you call him, Alex? Asks the dad. He nods, and the whale nods. For 20 minutes, their 3 hearts play. Better let him go now, says the father. She nods. Zoom! Off goes Orca in frothy joy. Next lesson. Fishing, she practices casting in the rain in the backyard on Saturday afternoon. Dad, the line's got my line. A long loop over the cable line. Robin, the dad's name, looks up, impressed with his girl's high throw. My daughter fishes for starfish. Child of the eagle, she fishes for stars. I guess I should have explained that the whale was in an aquarium, not the backyard. But the lion and the father and daughter were my beautiful next-door neighbors, and the dad was speaking poetry and didn't know it. She fishes for stars, he said. Starfish. And here's another one called Neighbors at the Fence. And this is about me and the horse who belongs to the family next door, but loves to spend his afternoons grazing in my pasture. With the last licks of twilight, the bittersweet chocolate dark horse down in his acre of pasture is getting ready to turn in. I hear him blowing air through his nostrils, now equivalent to a contented long yawn. Across the green world between us, though there is only one gap between trees for us to see each other when I am up in the house, we watch for each other. At start of my day when I raise the kitchen shade, he's there, waiting. Telepathically, we greet one another. He knows the scent of my dreams. One day this spring, I walked down to the fence to meet him. When I opened the door and entered the world in my slippers and robe, he nodded his great sage's head. Across my half-acre of yard, along the wild patch, I walked. Under low boughs of the blossoming dwarf tree orchard, I walked toward the fence, empty-handed, with no apple or pear for an offering, admiring attention, my only oblation. He leaned across the top row of barbed wire, knowing my emptiness. I responded in kind, leaning toward him, sensing his loneliness. He lowered his face, extending his forehead. I met it with mine. Together we remembered our souls before time. We stood like that for some while in third eye communion. When at last we moved apart, I never left the silky, living warmth of the moment, head to head, ivory smooth skin to soft brown hair. Am still there in perfect contentment, dreaming of a life without creature concerns, a life of pure happiness. We accept our horses and humans' lots, but pressing our heads together outside of time, we have made a pact. Can anyone imagine how a vibrant stillness between two good animals lasting no more than 3 minutes could last forever? Oh, that was such a powerful experience for me. The bond with the horse, can you imagine?
Yeah. Alla, this is beautiful. Absolutely captivating. Who would you say, and listen, I think we've already started to go into this next one, but I think it's so important that it's worth doubling down on and repeating if we have. But two-part question here. First and foremost, who would you say is your intended audience with this poetry book? And two, what would you like them to take from it upon completion?
I would like anyone and everyone, because it's really about sharing the world with one another, no matter what might separate us or divide us in our attitudes. The one thing that unites all of us is we're alive and we're in the world. And I'm not talking about the human world necessarily. I'm talking about Earth, creation. We all look at the stars. Most people actually find great comfort in water, some form of water, whether it's ocean or waterfall, river. We share those common things that move our hearts, but we might not have a language for. So we turn to the poets for the language. So many people tell me that I speak for them. They don't have the words, but they have the emotions. And they found the words for their emotions in my poetry. That means so much to me.
Wow.
I know exactly what they're talking about. I think the first thing to do is to overcome a fear of poetry. People have, moon, June, croon, spoon idea of poetry, which is quite boring, tedious. But I think what you've heard, there isn't a single moon or June or spoon in my work. I mean, might be here and there now and then, but it doesn't rhyme necessarily, and it's not the source of meaning of the poem.
Right.
So if I can help people be comfortable with poetry and realize that they need to expand their idea of what poetry is, that would be a great triumph for me as a poet and a writer.
I love that. Listen, people, as I stated when we first began, this is just one book, okay? Now, this was the main one, right? Diamonds in a Stony Field was really the one that we wanted to flesh out. But people, there are so many other books that she has written that you're going to want to take advantage of. And all you simply have to do is search her name. You put that in Google, you put that into Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and you're going to be greeted with so much. Now, for this next question, as we close out here, Alla, nobody knows the other books better than you. So really, dealer's choice here, but pick another one of your titles that you've written and maybe share another one of your poems to close us out.
Thanks, Benji. This is from a book called This Mortal Marriage, and it isn't necessarily about marriage. It's about the union and the communion between beings and between experiences. I wanted to pick one that was quite sensual. In the beginning of Diamonds in a Stony Field, there is a photograph of Claude Monet's painting called Water Lilies, 1903. And there's some poems that go with it called Sublimity, and they have to do with the sublime. This poem is about Claude Monet, and it's in another book, This Mortal Marriage. Claude Monet ate his garden with all his senses, cooked up feasts with flowering hands, and made soul paintings of his flowers, lost his vision in old age for a sad time, but was given second sight by surgeries. And then he began to paint with a clarity and intensity befitting the strongest herbs, most fertile of color and form, unlike anything before. Bowers of rainbow roses and viridian-blessed iris, shimmering lavender pools, and designs of raw grace without rules, altogether unselfed, celebratory, and aware. Monet was painting heaven even before going there. And Benji, this last one is for you. You said that you were an artist, a painter, a filmmaker, a writer, all kinds of other things, which were just a splendor of artistic forms. So to bless all of your artistic forms and help people realize that if cooking is their art, as Monet just told us, if cooking is your art, go with it. This is called Beyond the Edge of the World. After what you think of as your life, there is a reality the soul staggers into, light blind but glad with relief, taking its first full breath. Everything new, nothing hurting. Familiar joys made lively again without the glitches, pain, or regret. And new color everywhere. Experiences related to the senses but without limits. Precise and unmuddled. Music unimaginably sublime. Gardens with creatures that speak their names in the musky fragrances they give. Nothing nasty or poisonous, no allergic reactions or toxic surprises. Friends with no hidden malice lurking under the skull. And there is at last no need for compasses, prisons, or pens. There be dragons here indeed, luminous beings and seers made of brilliant diaphanous colors and iridescent light, whose work is to transport the soul to all the ports of heaven past heaven, easier than air, kinder than light, the intensely now of the wonder places. This is the sequence and urgency toward which we arrive, intense not because it will end or the soul fears that it will, but because there is bottomless depth and infinite breadth instead of horizons. To fall into it while still in the body of time would make one dizzy, but in the eternal body of color and music, movement is all possible and joy. The then that is now and the moment that was are forgotten in all their heaviness of duration, their unbearable delays of redemption, their absence of insight. All that remains are essence and love made right. Everything that the young universe in all its 13.7 billion years of straining could not make happen.
People, this stuff is deep. Okay, these are deep philosophical poems. And you know what I love is depending, and this is what I love about art, right? Let me just put that out there in terms of the sense that art is open to interpretation, and poems are as well. And depending on where you are in your life and circumstances that you've encountered, these poems are going to resonate in a different way. And that is what is so beautiful and so profound about what she's talking about. Because you can hear one phrase and it will mean something to me, and it may mean something completely different for you. So listen, yes. I'm going to say it again. I know I don't have to, because I know that the majority of you are already there. I know that you are like me and you are sold and you're going through the process of purchasing your copies as we speak. For everybody else, I don't know, man. You're asleep. You need to wake up, or you're going to get passed by. But I'm going to say it once again. All right, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Alla Renée Bozarth.com are the places you have to go. Diamonds in a Stony Field is the main title that we focused on. But people, there is so much more, okay? Amongst a plethora of them, check out Life is Goodbye, Life is Hello. A Journey Through Grief. You're going to want to look at the Foot of the Mountain. And then, of course, one of my personal favorites is the Book of Bliss. All of these books are fantastic. And listen, there's so much more. I just named a few of them, but I promise you, there is enough to go around. They're all fantastic, and they're all books you're going to want to get lost in. So you can thank me later. Head on over there today, pick up your copies. And listen, you have Alla Renée Bozarth to thank for it all. Alla, this has been a true pleasure and absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
I have loved being with you and your audience, Benji. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and your skill.